He doesn't even know I exist. That's what she said. I was walking past the spare room, the one she turned into her late-night reading space 2 months ago. No warning, no argument, no drama. Just one morning. I think I need a space that's mine. I nodded. That's what I did back then. I nodded and kept things going. I worked late, took care of bills, folded towels. I thought that was enough. But hearing those 5 words through a half-closed door changed everything. She didn't know I was there, and she definitely didn't know I could hear the voice of the man she was talking to. His name was Mason. I'd seen the name on her phone a few times, always listed as M. Barnes Freelance. I figured it was work-related. She'd recently started doing side projects for a local nonprofit. Community events, grant writing, all good things. I was proud of her. I didn't feel pride now. I felt like I had walked into someone else's life, like I'd stepped into the background of a film I wasn't cast in. She kept talking. I sleep next to him and feel like I'm in a coma. He doesn't touch me. He doesn't ask how I'm doing. He barely sees me. It's like I'm invisible. You're the first person I felt real around in, I don't know, years. She laughed then. Not the laugh she used with me. Not that loud, silly, contagious one I used to love. This one was quieter, intimate, like it was meant for just him. I stood there listening, frozen with something I hadn't felt in a long time. Humiliation. Not anger. Not heartbreak. Just that deep, cold shame of realizing you're no longer even in the story. You're the wallpaper. And I started rewinding everything in my head. Her new perfume. The morning yoga classes she suddenly started attending at 6:15 a.m., even though she always said she hated getting up early. The phone she began carrying with her into the bathroom. The fact that she stopped calling me babe. I went downstairs and sat on the couch. The TV was on, but I couldn't see the screen. It was all static in my head. We'd been married for 9 years. No kids. Not for lack of trying. We just never made it happen. At some point, I think she gave up. Maybe I did too. But we stopped talking about it. Now, I sat there realizing she had stopped talking to me a long time ago. I just didn't notice. I didn't sleep that night. Not a minute. I just waited for her to come downstairs and say she was heading to bed. Same as every night. She walked right past me, eyes on her phone, mumbling something that sounded like, "Good night." But she never looked up. She had no idea what I'd heard. No idea what I knew. And I had no idea yet what I was going to do. But I knew this. My marriage ended tonight, and I was the only one who noticed. The next morning felt unreal, like waking up in a stranger's house. She was in the kitchen making coffee, humming to herself. Same routine, same blue mug, same soft robe that always slipped off one shoulder. But everything was different. I watched her from the hallway for a few seconds, quietly, like I was observing someone I used to know. My heart wasn't pounding. I wasn't in a rage. I just felt detached, like I was hovering slightly outside my body, watching this whole life from the wrong angle. She looked up and smiled. "You okay? You look like you didn't sleep." I lied. Just couldn't shut my brain off. She walked over and kissed me on the cheek. Her lips were warm, familiar. It felt like she was kissing a version of me that didn't exist anymore. All day, I tried to go through the motions. I sat in traffic, went to work, responded to emails, but in the back of my mind, I kept playing her voice on repeat. He doesn't even know I exist. I heard it in the rustle of paper, in the beep of the elevator, in the silence of my office. It clung to everything. That night when I got home, her car wasn't in the driveway. No note, no message, just gone. I waited 2 hours before texting her. Me, "Everything okay?" Leslie, "Yeah, sorry. I stayed late after the community center meeting. One of the new volunteers needed help sorting grant applications." Barnes. It had to be him. I stared at her text for a long time before responding. "No problem. Drive safe." She didn't come home until after midnight. I pretended to be asleep when I heard the door open. She moved around quietly, her steps careful, not tired. Careful. That's when I knew she was aware of what she was doing. She wasn't confused or falling into something by accident. She was choosing it. I wish I could say I confronted her right away. I didn't. I spent the next few days floating, watching, collecting details. She stopped wearing her wedding ring around the house, said it was getting snagged on laundry. She started dressing nicer, even when she was just running errands. And every time I asked how her meetings went, she gave the same vague smile and said, "Productive." I started checking our shared calendar. She never put anything in it anymore. I checked her GPS location history, turned off. Her laptop password changed. I wasn't looking for proof anymore. I had proof. I was looking for the shape of it. How long had this been happening? Was she in love with him? Was he married too? Then one night, I got an answer I wasn't ready for. I came home early from work after my boss let us out ahead of the storm. The house was quiet, but her car was outside. I figured maybe she was upstairs napping or watching a show. I moved slowly. I don't even know why. I wasn't trying to sneak up. I just didn't want to break the moment. But then I heard it. Her voice not soft this time. Low charged. "Don't say that. He's still my husband. For now." For now. I didn't hear his reply. Just the sound of a chair creaking and the unmistakable rustle of movement too intimate for coworkers. I backed away from the staircase. I didn't need to see them. I didn't need photos or a recording. What I had was worse. Certainty. That night, I didn't go back in. I got in my car and drove to the edge of town. I parked near the old reservoir and stared at the water for almost 3 hours. No music, no lights, just my thoughts stretching out in every direction. I wasn't angry. I wasn't devastated. What I felt was hollow, like I'd spent years building a life from softwood, and it only took a gust of wind to splinter it apart. This wasn't a movie. There was no dramatic confrontation, no suitcase being thrown onto the lawn. It was just quiet collapse. And I knew something else too. She would never admit to it. Not unless I made her. And even then, she'd probably find a way to twist it into my fault. So I began to plan. Not revenge, not punishment. A clean break and maybe a way to make her look at me and realize what she threw away. It's strange how quiet betrayal is. You always imagine it crashing down like dishes shattering or tires screeching. But the real thing is a whisper. It slips in slowly, seeps through the cracks. You think you'll feel it coming, but it's already happened by the time you notice. I didn't say anything to Leslie the next morning. She was bright, unusually cheerful, talking about going to a new place for brunch that just opened on Carter Street. I played along. I smiled when she smiled. I even complimented her sweater, the one I'd seen her wear the night before while she was talking to him. I wanted her to think I was still blind. That gave me time, space, control. That weekend, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went to stay with my younger brother, Kent. He lived 2 towns over in a small condo above a hardware shop. Said he liked the quiet. We hadn't been close for a while. Not for any reason in particular, just drifted. I told him I needed a place to crash while I cleared my head. He didn't ask questions, just handed me a key and a pillow. "You still doing okay with Leslie?" he asked once while we were eating takeout on his couch. "You always look tired." That hit harder than I expected. Tired. Not sad, not distant, just tired. That's how people saw me now. I didn't answer. I just nodded and changed the subject. During those nights at Kent's, I started writing everything down. A journal, sort of. Not because I was planning to show it to anyone, but because I needed to make sense of the timeline. Needed to map out when she started slipping away. Was it after her job loss? Was it when we stopped trying for a baby? Or maybe it was something I'd never see coming. Maybe she changed and never told me. Or worse, maybe she didn't change. Maybe she always had this in her. I went through our shared bank account next. That's when I noticed 2 recurring payments that didn't make sense. $185 every Tuesday and Friday, listed under G Creative Consulting. I Googled it. Nothing. No business registry, no website. It was a front or, worse, an alias. I checked her email. Nothing there either. She was careful, methodical, but I wasn't trying to catch her anymore. I was past that. I was preparing. I met with a divorce attorney 2 days later. Her name was Marcia Holloway. Sharp, early 40s, wore charcoal gray suits, and had a quiet, confident voice that never once made me feel small. She asked me questions like a doctor taking a patient's history. Efficient, precise, but not cold. Do you want to catch her in the act? I shook my head. No, I already have. Then let's work on making sure you don't lose everything. We built a plan. I had more leverage than I realized. The house was in my name, bought before we married. The car was jointly owned, but she hadn't made a payment on it in over a year. I handled the bills, the insurance, the retirement accounts, everything. All she had were secrets and a smile she used like a scalpel. That same week, I found out something else. Mason wasn't single. I don't know why I looked him up. Curiosity, maybe. His name finally came up on a local freelance site listed under community media projects. I scrolled through his portfolio and saw her face, Leslie's, in a photo promoting a library renovation campaign. He'd taken it. That's how they met. His bio said he lived in a neighboring city with his wife, Dana, and their daughter. The hypocrisy stung worse than I thought it would. She was destroying our marriage for a man who was also lying to someone else. I wondered if Dana had any idea. Probably not. Just like me. That's when I made my first real move. I wrote a short, respectful message to Dana through her LinkedIn. I didn't accuse, didn't rant, just gave her the name of the business, the days of the payments, and the phrase Leslie used that night. He doesn't even know I exist. I ended it with, if I'm wrong, I apologize, but I think we both deserve to know the truth. I stared at the message for a full 5 minutes before hitting send. My hands shook afterward, not from fear, but from relief, like I had finally stopped pretending everything could still be saved. That night, I went home. Leslie was sitting on the couch watching a reality show I'd never seen her care about before. She patted the cushion next to her like nothing had changed. "You've been quiet this week," she said. "Everything okay?" I nodded. "Just tired," I told her. She leaned her head on my shoulder. And in that moment, I realized I didn't even hate her. I didn't love her either. I was done and she had no idea. By the following week, Leslie started acting differently. Not dramatically, just slightly off. She wasn't as quick with her jokes. She asked me twice if I was feeling sick. She even made breakfast on a random Tuesday, which hadn't happened in over a year. I didn't give her anything to work with. No clues, no mood swings. I was polite, steady, and still sleeping in the same bed. That was part of the plan. I wasn't staying for love. I was staying for position. Marcia, my attorney, had warned me. The moment she senses you're pulling away, she'll either get defensive or manipulative. Neither helps you. Stay steady. Stay quiet. So I did. Even when she started asking things like, "Do you still want to go to the beach this summer?" And "Should we finally repaint the guest room?" As if painting a room would repaint our history. But what I didn't expect was how easy it became to lie back. I wasn't hurting anymore. I was watching, documenting, saving text messages, taking photos of bank statements, tracking activity without her noticing. I even copied over 2 years' worth of shared cloud data before she could lock it down. Meanwhile, her affair continued. She didn't know I saw the emails coming under an old inbox she'd once synced to our iPad and never unsynced. I didn't go looking, but one night, the screen lit up while I was reading on it. I caught the subject line first. "Can't stop thinking about your voice last night." His email was something ordinary looking, generic enough to be overlooked, but the body of the message gave everything away. He referenced a scarf she had worn, something she'd said, something she'd done. I took screenshots, saved them in 2 locations, and archived everything. I didn't even read the full messages anymore. I didn't want to know every detail. I just needed enough to move cleanly when the time came. But the irony, that week she started initiating intimacy again. Not passion, not love, just presence, physical gestures, kissing my neck while I cooked, reaching for my hand while we walked into the grocery store. A part of me wondered if she was trying to patch things or if she was guilty and trying to cover it with closeness. Either way, it wasn't working. The following Thursday, I stayed late at Kent's. I told her I had work drinks. She didn't press. When I came home around midnight, I walked into the house and smelled a perfume I didn't recognize. Not hers. It was faint, but it was there. There were 2 wine glasses in the sink. One had a lipstick smudge that was not Leslie's usual shade. She never wore coral, ever. The front window was slightly cracked open. The cushions on the couch had been hastily readjusted. A throw blanket was folded the wrong way. She was asleep when I came upstairs, or at least pretending to be. Her back was turned. I didn't say a word. I just stood in the doorway and stared at her, trying to remember what it was like to love her without doubt. But the images in my head were no longer of vacations or our wedding or the way she used to sing along to awful 90s songs. Now it was her whispering behind closed doors. Her laugh saved only for someone else. Her walking past me with her phone already in her hand. I wasn't heartbroken anymore. I was just gone. I turned off the light and walked back downstairs. Slept on the couch with my hoodie as a pillow. In the morning, she asked why. Fell asleep watching TV. I mumbled. She nodded, not convinced, but not ready to push. Later that day, I got an email. Not from her, not from Mason. It was Dana. The subject line said, "Thank you for telling me." She had read everything, and she had her own story to tell. Dana's message wasn't what I expected. I assumed anger, maybe a denial or even silence. But what I got was a calm, well-written account of a woman who had clearly been down this road before, just not with me involved. She thanked me, said she'd suspected something for months but didn't want to believe it. She noticed her husband's sudden project extensions. The time he spent working late with a woman whose name he casually dropped in conversation without ever explaining who she was. Leslie, he had told her, is just really passionate about community spaces. Dana said she had already contacted a divorce lawyer. She attached 3 photos, screenshots of texts from Mason to my wife. Nothing graphic, nothing that would violate anyone's boundaries, but they were clear enough. Emotional, romantic, familiar. One message read, "Wish I could wake up with you just once and not have to sneak away." That one hit different. Not because it hurt me, but because I knew now that Leslie wasn't just cheating. She was fantasizing about a life that excluded me. I thanked Dana and told her I was sorry. She replied simply, "You and I didn't ask for this, but we don't have to leave quietly either." That stayed with me. I hadn't even considered that she might want to expose it publicly. But I wasn't ready to go nuclear. Not yet. My focus was on the exit, not the explosion. That weekend, I booked a storage unit in a neighboring town under my brother's name and started slowly moving out my valuables. Family heirlooms, tax files, a box of keepsakes my mom had left me when she passed, and all the electronics I paid for. Every night, I'd take 1 or 2 boxes while Leslie was on her calls or running out for errands. She didn't notice, or if she did, she said nothing. And then she made her first mistake. On Sunday afternoon, I got a message on our shared laptop while I was logged into our Hulu account. It was a notification from her phone, accidentally synced via Google. The message was from Mason. It said, "This week, I can finally get a night at the same hotel. You sure he's still clueless?" The words hit like a cold slap. Not because I hadn't already known it was physical, but because now I knew they were bold enough to risk slipping up. She didn't care anymore. They thought I was a ghost in my own home, too slow or too dumb to see what was in front of me. So I screenshotted that message too, saved it, backed it up, printed a copy, and slid it into a folder I kept hidden in the lining of my duffel bag in the trunk of my car. The day after that, she finally noticed something was off. She came downstairs while I was making coffee and leaned against the counter, watching me. "You've been, I don't know, quiet lately." I didn't look up. "Have I?" "You have. Are you upset with me?" I looked her dead in the eye. Calm. "Should I be?" She blinked. The moment hung in the air like a test. She almost cracked. I saw it. For a second, her lips parted like she was going to confess something. But she didn't. Instead, she smiled. Fake. Safe. "Just asking." I nodded. "I'm fine." But she wasn't. That night, I noticed her checking my phone while I was in the shower. She left the screen unlocked. Didn't even try to hide it. I walked into the room as she was placing it back on the nightstand, and we locked eyes. She smiled again, said nothing. Later, I saw a new contact had been searched. Marcia Holloway, attorney. She was digging. That meant she was scared. And fear meant pressure. And pressure breaks people. For the first time in months, I slept soundly. She knew something was coming. She just didn't know how much I already had. By Tuesday, the air between us had changed. Not just the usual silence. This was thicker, tense. Leslie was suddenly paying attention to everything I did. Where I set my phone, how long I showered, what time I came home. But she tried to play it cool, like it was all just normal marriage curiosity. It wasn't. She was circling, sniffing for a threat. That morning, I left the house early and parked 2 blocks away. I wanted to see what she did when she thought I was gone. It didn't take long. 40 minutes after I left, she walked outside dressed in a gray coat I'd never seen before, holding a different purse than usual. She got into her car and drove off without looking back. I followed at a distance, careful not to get too close. I knew the route already. I'd memorized it from bank records and old calendar entries. Sure enough, she pulled into the parking lot of the same boutique hotel downtown. The one with tinted glass and valet service, even on a Tuesday morning. She stayed parked for a few minutes. Then Mason pulled in. Different car than last time. Rental plates. He walked around, opened her door for her, and she laughed, head back, carefree. She kissed him before they even made it inside. I didn't feel anger. I felt confirmation. I snapped 3 photos from the back seat of my car. Nothing invasive, just enough them walking, her hand in his, her bag in his other hand. Both of them disappearing through the automatic doors like they were stepping into another world where I didn't exist. I drove straight to Marcia's office. She barely looked up when I walked in. "Tell me you've got something." I handed her the photos. She grinned. "Perfect." That same day, we finalized my financial protections. The prenup she had once refused to sign back when we were newly engaged didn't matter anymore. Her adultery gave me leverage far beyond any document. Marcia smiled when I told her about Dana's email. If she's already filed and you have her as a witness, Leslie's going to lose everything she was counting on. That night, I walked into the house like nothing had happened. Leslie was making dinner, her signature chicken piccata, which she only made when she wanted something. She greeted me with that too wide smile and poured me a glass of wine. "How was your day?" she asked. "Busy," I said. "Yours?" "Oh, same. Just running around. You know, MHM." She hesitated. "I was thinking maybe we should take that trip you talked about, the cabin near the lake." That cabin was something I'd mentioned over a year ago. She shot it down then, said she didn't want to be cut off from civilization. Now she wanted to play cozy, like she still had a place in my head. "I'll think about it," I said. She blinked, confused. That wasn't the reaction she expected. After dinner, I told her I was heading to bed early. Instead, I sat in the guest room and read through Dana's follow-up messages. She'd met with her attorney. Mason didn't deny it. When she confronted him, he begged her not to ruin his career. Said Leslie was just a distraction from his failing marriage. So much for soulmates. I sent that detail straight to Marcia. The next morning, Leslie was waiting by the front door before I even came downstairs. She handed me a coffee, black, my usual, except I hadn't taken it that way in months. She wasn't paying attention. She was just trying to paint a picture she thought I still lived inside. "I was thinking," she said, "maybe we should do a weekend together. Just us. Somewhere nice." "That's the second trip you've mentioned this week," I said, sipping the bitter coffee. "What changed?" She forced a laugh. "Nothing. I just miss you." "Do you?" The words hung in the air between us like a wall. I didn't mean it to be cruel, but I also didn't say it to be kind. I wanted her to hear herself. I wanted her to feel the weight of what she'd done. She tried to hug me before I left for work. I let her. She lingered a second longer than usual, like she was checking if I still felt warm, if she could still reach whatever version of me she remembered. She couldn't. That day, I moved the final boxes into storage. My name was already off the joint account. I set up a new phone plan. My tax info had been secured. The house still mine. She hadn't realized yet that the utilities were no longer in her name and that the car she drove was actually leased under mine. She thought I was still asleep, but I was wide awake, and she had no idea she was already standing on a floor about to give way. Friday morning, she woke up before me. That was new. Normally, I was the one dragging myself out of bed first, brewing coffee, scrolling the news in the kitchen while she stayed under the covers, pretending to sleep. But this morning, I walked downstairs and she was already dressed, jeans, a sweater, her hair brushed, no makeup, just a blank, unreadable expression on her face. "Coffee's ready," she said without turning around. "Thanks." She sat at the table, cradling her mug, staring at a spot in the tile like it held an answer she couldn't find. After a long pause, she spoke. "Do you think I've been distant?" I looked at her carefully. "What do you mean?" She bit her lip. "I don't know. I just feel like you're pulling away from me lately." I kept my face neutral. "What makes you say that?" She shrugged, but her voice cracked just slightly. "You don't look at me the same. You come home late. You're quiet. I don't know. It just feels like something changed." Funny. She'd said those same things to him. Now she was saying them to me, except she wasn't in control of the narrative anymore. And this time, the silence wasn't because I didn't care. It was because I knew everything, and I was just waiting for her to make her final mistake. That afternoon, she called me 3 times during work hours. No messages, just missed calls. When I got home, she was on the phone in the backyard, pacing. I stayed in the car and listened through the open window. I know, but what if he already knows something? No, I'm serious. He's not reacting the same. I think he's planning something. Then silence. She must have noticed I pulled into the driveway. She rushed back inside and met me at the front door like she hadn't just confessed her fear to someone else. Her smile was so forced it made my chest tighten, not with pain, but with disgust. She was still trying to salvage it, still thinking she could act her way out of this. That evening, she suggested we go out to eat. Said it would be nice to reconnect. I agreed. We drove to a small Italian restaurant just outside town. The same one where we'd celebrated our 2nd anniversary years ago. She kept reminiscing, throwing out fake nostalgia like bait. I nodded through most of it, giving her nothing. And then came the shift. As we were waiting for the check, her phone lit up. A message from a contact saved as M. Not even bothering to disguise it anymore. I glanced at the screen. One line was visible. "What time should I book the room for Sunday?" She saw my eyes flick down. She froze. For the first time, she looked afraid. I didn't say a word, just handed my card to the waiter and excused myself to the restroom. When I came back, she was pale, hands tight in her lap, phone turned upside down. On the drive home, she stayed silent. Not one word, just the sound of the turn signal ticking too fast and her shallow breathing in the passenger seat. By the time we pulled into the driveway, she was already unraveling. Inside, she sat on the edge of the bed while I changed in the bathroom. When I came out, she looked up at me and asked the question I knew was coming. "Do you know something?" I looked at her for a long time before responding. "I know a lot of things, Leslie." She swallowed hard. "Like what?" I walked to the closet, grabbed a folded envelope, and placed it on the bed beside her. "This has a copy of your hotel receipts, screenshots of messages, and the name of the woman whose husband you've been seeing." Her eyes widened. She didn't touch the envelope. I didn't shout. I didn't accuse. I just said, "I've known for weeks. You were sloppy." She covered her mouth like she was going to be sick, but she still didn't apologize. Not right away. Not even then. What she said next told me everything I needed to know about the person she really was. "So what now? Are you going to ruin me?" I almost laughed. "Ruin you? No, Leslie. You did that all by yourself." She finally opened the envelope. Her hands were shaking. Her eyes darted from photo to photo, then to the printout of the email Dana sent me confirming every detail. For the first time in our entire marriage, Leslie had no words, just silence. And that silence was the only honest thing she'd given me in years. Leslie didn't sleep that night. I could hear her breathing, hear her shifting under the covers. hear the occasional creak of the mattress as she turned toward me, then away again. I lay on my side, eyes open, waiting for her to say something, anything. But she didn't. She knew words wouldn't save her anymore. By morning, I had packed a single duffel bag and left it near the door. I came downstairs to find her sitting at the table with a cup of untouched coffee in front of her. She looked hollow, smaller than I remembered. She hadn't even tried to pretend anymore. No makeup, no forced smile, no fake sweetness. "When did you stop loving me?" she asked, her voice hoarse. I thought for a long moment. Then I answered honestly, "I don't know. But I remember the exact moment I stopped respecting you." She flinched like I'd hit her, but I hadn't raised my voice once. I hadn't thrown a single insult. I hadn't needed to. My absence said everything she never listened to when I was present. I slid a copy of the signed divorce papers across the table. My signature was already on it. She just needed to add hers. "You don't want to talk about this?" she asked quietly. "Try to work through it." I laughed under my breath. "Work through what?" "You made a second life behind my back. You slept next to me at night and lied through your teeth during the day. And even when I gave you chances to be honest, you looked me in the eye and kept going. You didn't want a husband. You wanted someone too exhausted to notice." She reached for my hand, pulled it away. "This wasn't a mistake, Leslie. This was a decision. And now I'm making mine." I stood and picked up my bag. I didn't look back when I left the house. I didn't wait for her to follow. I didn't need drama. I needed distance. 3 weeks later, I moved into a quiet one-bedroom in a different part of town. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Peaceful. Mine. Kent helped me haul furniture. Dana sent me one last email to let me know her divorce had gone through, and Mason was already spiraling, trying to get his reputation back after their community found out the truth. I didn't care much about Mason. He wasn't my problem anymore. Leslie tried contacting me twice after that, both times by email. The first was an apology, long, emotional, begging for forgiveness. The second was shorter, angrier, blaming me for giving up. I didn't respond to either. There was nothing left to say. One day, much later, I saw her at a grocery store. She was alone, standing in front of the frozen dinners aisle, staring at nothing. She didn't see me, and for the first time since the night she whispered those 5 words, "He doesn't even know I exist," I realized she had become exactly what she feared, invisible to me, and I walked past her like a stranger in a crowd because that's all she was.